Anyway, Joseph, and everyone out there listening, whether you are with us live or whether you are listening to this later on whatever podcast network that you listen to, welcome to the Underground. I think this is episode 185. To be honest, I don't know, because since we've been doing these reviews, I have not been keeping up with it. It's not a big deal. We'll, the numbers will be on the podcast thing, and eventually I'll update it on YouTube once we're done with all the reviews and it's passed.
You've uploaded all the episodes too.
Yes, yeah. As of today, all the stuff is we're completely up to date on podcast networks, and we've been up to date on YouTube.
This is 185. You were spot
yeah.
on. I thought it was too. I was like,
All
I think
right.
it is. Yeah, good job.
Yeah,
good
I thought that was the case. I'm just glad that I've actually been keeping up with the numbers and all of my terrible organization on my computer. But Joseph, we haven't done this in a while, and I wanted us to try to start doing this again because it actually has been incredibly helpful for us as far as being able to keep the show running. But I figured we haven't done it in a while, so at the beginning of a show we haven't done it. So go ahead and just give us a little spiel about our value for value system and what that's all about.
Why do I have to do it?
Because that's your job.
That's my job.
Yeah, you wear
You're
that.
Good at it too.
You wear that hat.
I got you. No, so we do a value for value system here, which means that we are not Russian assets. I don't know if you've heard about Attendant Media, but all the big names from there. We instead accept payments from anyone. Doesn't matter. You could live in Russia. You could live in the U.S. You could live in El Salvador. If you believe you're getting value from us, you can donate in the form of your time, talent, and treasure. Just click the direct.me link, and there you'll see all the links that you need to become a producer. And I say producer because we do not call you fans or audience members or any listeners or anything else. We call you producers because that's exactly what you are. And if you donate anywhere between $0 and $100, or between $1 and $100, you automatically become a producer. The corresponding episode, 100 to 200, makes you an associate executive producer, and then $200 and above makes you an executive producer of the corresponding episode. That can be lump sum or cumulative, and these are credits we will vouch for that you can put on your resume or anywhere where these credits are accepted, IMDb, anything. And also, again, it doesn't have to just be treasure, although that is important because we do have to keep the lights on. We've had plenty of our producers do artwork for us, suggest different movies and TV shows for us to watch, etc. And we know these are hard times, so anything that you can do, we do appreciate it.
Yes. Excuse me. So the reason, and I think you touched on this too, is that there are some expenses to this. It's not a lot. It comes out to about $250 a year right now, and it's just to keep up with the maintenance. And I mean, we're doing all of the stuff behind the scenes, so the thumbnails.
We were doing clips. I mean, but we're both working overtime. I work about 70, 80 hours a week, so it's a bit difficult.
It just gets really, really tough to, do a lot of that. So there's some stuff that we're working on, trying to kind of get back in the swing of things. But it's great because that money goes directly back into the show.
Yes, it does.
And it's really nice. It's like being able to upgrade gear or, whatever the case may be, that's where that money goes to. And it just it keeps us from having to sell you toasters or BetterHelp or gross meal plan food.
Kamikoto knives.
Yeah.
Whatever it was. Or making you become a lord or lady of Scotland by selling you a fake square footage of land.
That we just didn't want to go down that route, and this is helping us stay away from that.
And the other thing too is that when you take advertising, it limits your free speech, and I bring up a lot of that because, as y'all know, plenty of people every day are getting demonetized or completely censored from YouTube and taken off YouTube. And so the value for value system and podcasting specifically is how you can support us to where we're not reliant upon YouTube. And that's the thing is that, like, yes, you'll see that certain of our videos and different things have been monetized and have ads on them, but we don't want to go that route. Only reason why we went that route is because we said, hey, listen, we understand times are hard, and if y'all aren't able to donate, we will have to go that route because we do have to keep the lights on. But eventually, if the value for value system gets to the point to where we don't require that or need that, that will go away, and that's our hope. That's always been our hope and our desire.
And to be honest, if so, the live streams are still demonetized as far as like we don't monetize the live streams. It's just the re-uploaded videos and anything that we make an actual like video on YouTube. That's the only stuff that we currently have monetized. It's the only stuff that's we have any plan to do with that. And if you don't want the ads on those, download the Brave browser and just watch YouTube on there. And you never get ads. And every once in a while, YouTube gets pissed and goes, hey, don't use this. And you just click out of it and continue what you were doing. It's that simple.
Exactly.
So there's always workarounds for that sort of stuff. You don't have to pay for YouTube Premium and all that garbage. So download the Brave browser. You'll get around any of that. And to be honest, we don't care.
Yeah.
So do what you want. Yeah, do it if you want to. Cool. All right. Well, Joseph, I guess we need to get into this episode of.
Well, before we do, I gotta mention a couple of things. Briefly, the Emmys were yesterday. I didn't watch.
Neither did I.
But Shogun, won a lot of awards. Well deserved.
Very well deserved, especially at this point. I think it's still sitting at the top of my list, and the only thing I'm waiting for now to come out to see how everything kind of like where it falls into place by the end of the year is Arcane.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Rings of Power episode 8.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
Arcane's the only thing that could really do it.
Yep, that's how I feel.
I'm so excited.
I am as well, dude. But so they won. Unfortunately, the act that plays Yabushige did not win an award. And so on our Twitter account,
bro, they should have. They should have. I don't know what we would consider a sweep, but they just. I don't even care what they were nominated for. They should have won in every category.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter because there's
Best
nothing.
Catering.
Yeah, there's nothing that's come out this year that has been as good as that show.
No, there's not. And I watched
so far.
I watched a good bit of the Emmy stuff just so I can kind of have a good baseline to compare. And bro, some of the how in the world did Fallout get nominated?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what? Fallout, is the competition that lacking?
Fallout for me is the show that it's like it's not good, but it's pretty unoffensive for your average viewing audience.
Yeah, but there's no way like the season 2 of House of Dragon was way better than Fallout.
Oh man, I think I would I would agree. I think there's more logic in season 2 for sure of House of the Dragon. But it's like it's the new shiny thing. It's a allegory for communism for them or whatever, for like maybe I'm trying to say it's like an allegory for like how capitalism is bad, even though the guy who created Fallout came out and was like, no dude, Fallout's about how war is bad.
Yes.
It's like,
oh, that's great.
It's like,
well, them snubbing
oh wait, hold on, you're breaking up a little bit. You're breaking
Patty
up.
Constantine.
They snubbed him.
Well, from House of the Dragon season 1.
Yeah.
Remember he got snubbed. He never got nominated.
Oh.
And he definitely should have not only been nominated but won because his performance was A+.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I mean, war shows are war shows. I don't really care for them anymore. But other than that, the next thing I wanted to mention is I don't know if you saw I'm not going to read it or anything, but I don't know if you saw the article that came out recently regarding the one of the showrunners for Rings of Power, that he was responding to critics saying that something about the show being a success. This is my paraphrase version, so this isn't going to be 100% exact. But the point I wanted to be is that he said that a journey through Middle Earth wouldn't be complete without some meeting some trolls along the way, and basically kind of lumping into a whole category of people who critique the show
Yeah.
as just being trolls. And don't get me wrong, like
Cope.
yes, I expect him to defend his show,
Yeah, but
right?
Cope, like,
Yeah,
bro, come on.
I know. And that's why I was just like, nah, dude, you need to. It's the same. We're probably beating a dead horse here with things we said before, which is that it's not criticism to be able to, even with this episode, point out how they just insert their ideology, how they get Tolkien wrong, how it's just bad writing as a whole, even for if you take Tolkien out of it and just objectively view it. So just to try to discard everyone who critiqued the show as being racist or this is or that is or just being trolls is just clowning on the actual criticisms of the show.
Yeah. I just well,
And you know what? To be fair, too, a lot of the people, there are a lot of people who were critical of House of Dragon, how it was being promoted. And
Sure.
actually, you and I thought it was not gonna be good.
Yeah, well,
and
at the very least, we thought like they were gonna. Well, it was at that point. It was like everything else that we had seen coming before it. Because I think Eternals had come out before season 1 of House of the Dragon, and that entire we had talked about it, but the whole marketing campaign for that was just around like
diversity,
like
and
I
nothing
like
about
your
this.
yeah, like your basically either like your skin color or your sexual identity, and they weren't talking about the movie or the merits of the movie other than it was like, oh, it's gonna save like they were. Oh my gosh, dude, the cringe that was yeah. Oh, you know how many lives this movie's gonna save? Like
I forgot about that.
such. I mean, dude, like thinking back on it,
Somebody watches
I would,
Eternals,
dude.
man. Somebody's in a bad state if they watch that movie and say this movie saved my life.
Yeah, like I would love to talk to have like because people just I don't know people don't take you at like your sincerity, I guess. It's always, well, hey, like I'm being sincere when I'm like this guy saying that whatever group of people he's talking about are their lives are going to be saved because of the Eternals. Like you don't see how cringy that is. Like you don't see how
Yeah.
stupid that making that comment is. That somehow like
And I think
and
my whole thing was that at that time was people acting like the vast majority of America had an issue with diversity before that. Like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is like
like,
it doesn't count,
like
right?
Blade didn't
Oh, and
save
here's the
Marvel.
deal, and this is what I've realized because we talked about this last week too, and it doesn't really matter to me because I don't care. But we talked about Winona Ryder and how she was kind of subtly taking jabs at Millie Bobby Brown because she doesn't know anything about cinema. And honestly, dude, that's kind of what it comes down to. Like I'm not like an all-knowing cinemaphile. I like movies. I love movies. I had a Blockbuster across the street from me growing up, so I would just go over all the time and just like rent whatever,
You
like
gotta
whatever they
explain
had.
to our Gen Z
Oh, what a Blockbuster is?
was.
Well, back in the day, there was this place that you could go. I mean, they know what Blockbuster is, where you could go and rent movies physically from a store before Netflix put them out
Before
of
the
business.
communists took over.
And then Netflix comes out and it's like, oh, dude, look at these lists that I can make and I can like knock out all of these movies. And it's gotten worse now because all of the stuff that seems to be original coming out of these things just doesn't really hold up.
And on that note of Netflix and streaming, good people, if there is a movie or show that you really like, buy the physical copy of it.
Because it's never guaranteed. What's interesting about that too, and sorry guys, we are going to get to Lord of the Rings at some point, but what's interesting about that is I was watching a video from a YouTube channel called Good Bad Flicks that I like, where he talks about a lot of either old television or sometimes it's like good bad movies that are just like campy whatever movies from the 60s 70s 80s 90s, like that whole deal. But he's been going down like a series of television shows that like you've probably never heard of or that have been forgotten, and it's not a new thing that a television show comes out. Maybe it gets like 12 or 24 episodes, and it does so poorly that they remove that, and then it just completely disappears. Like, it doesn't have a physical release. Like, there's no way to watch like an entire series of a show that happened to be on. I can't think of any of them off the top of my head that he was talking about because they're all very unknown. But there's just a lot of old television, probably some old movies too, that pretty much just don't exist. There's like, almost shadows of them left, so you can find like clips on YouTube, maybe a single episode on YouTube, but you can't find the entire series. Very, very interesting stuff. So I thought that was interesting. It's like this isn't a new phenomenon. It's actually been going on for a long time. It's just the invention of the internet has made it a lot more obvious to all of us what's really going on. So
yeah, I plan on buying Shogun season 1. I plan on buying Arcane season 1, and I plan on buying Godzilla -1.
Yeah, we're getting a 4K release in November. I think it's November 16th.
Nice.
16th or the 19th. I can't quite remember. And I've already got Arcane pre-ordered. That comes out that'll be here in about a month. And then it's about a month later that the series comes out. So,
and I plan on paying Amazon money to not do another season of Rings of Power, just to save me time.
I wish. I'm with you at this point. I don't think it's getting canceled. That's better for us if it doesn't get canceled. I mean,
I think the likelihood of it getting canceled maybe after season 3, but but I can also see them just being too prideful and being like, well, we're just going to significantly reduce the budget and do a 5-season arc. I mean, but there's no way, dude. Like, no one, the only way people are talking about it is negatively. I'm not really seeing that many positive reviews of it outside of this last episode. But that's not even enough to save it, I mean, regardless of where they go from here, the foundation that they built in season 1 just destroyed the show.
Oh, for sure. Doesn't look like. Oh, no way. I was checking on the potential physical release. It doesn't look like there's a lot of stuff getting physical release for Shogun.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
That's just a random tweet. I haven't seen anything official yet. But I was looking through FX Shogun Limited Series.
Need that Red Sun copy.
Bruh. I mean, there are ways to get a physical release if one must get one.
Yeah.
Shogun Blu-ray.
I'm good.
Let's see.
I don't fly the open seas any longer. I did that in my younger years.
That's the old one.
Back when my legs were not or my stomach wasn't as nauseous on the seas,
Bro, I feel that. So
you ready to get into this dumpster fire?
Yeah. I guess. I don't know, man. It's so funny because like it is, but I'm also at the point where like they're not doing anything.
Nah, and that's why I said last week too.
This is such a.
As far as go ahead.
I was gonna say this is such an episode of just twiddling your thumbs. Like dude, it's like like I said, the dwarves do some stuff, and then everybody else is kind of still where. Oh, I guess there's some stuff that happens in Numenor at the end of the episode that we'll get into or whatever. But it's just like, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It is the stuff is happening, and then, like
so I told you I had a story to tell you before we got into this.
Oh yeah.
So oftentimes my keeper will tell me, be like, "Don't say anything. Don't tell me anything you know. I know you're just going to be critical."
She wants to get her own experience from it. Like she wants to be able to. Yeah, that's admirable for sure.
Yeah, and she's like, "I want to be able to judge it on my own and enjoy it, and not have to worry about you being so negative or critical, right? And everything." And so, funny, we're watching it Thursday, and she falls asleep during it. So I'm like, "That's a telltale sign."
Yeah, I don't blame her. Don't blame her one bit.
And, but then she didn't finish it. So she, while I was working Saturday, she finished it, and I got home and she said, "Dude, that last episode absolutely sucked." She was like, I was
Yeah.
like so excited because I was like, you weren't with me. I'm be able to watch it just on my own and take it in and everything. And I was like, oh, Joseph's right. And I'm like, yeah.
We, I have said many times, Shogun right now is sitting at the top of my list for best show of the year. It's not like, and the show is 90%, if not a little bit more than that, people in rooms talking to each other.
Yep.
But it's the way that it happens. It's the way
The
that
subtext.
Yes, it's the way that it's written. It's the way that it's acted. It's the way that it's directed. So like everything comes together, and like there's thought put into it. And we've talked about it a million times. We don't need to go back over it right now. But it's the way that they do everything. It's the interactions with the characters and the way that they have been characterized, so that like, yeah, it makes sense that this character would do this, or that's why she's giving him that look. It's all of that kind of stuff, and this show doesn't have that because we don't have like they're not fully fleshed out characters. There are like little things here and there, like the Durans are probably the closest thing we have to an actual like drama conflict sort of thing going on.
Even that's dumb.
It's not. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, of course.
It's not like it's dumb conflict. It's not good. And as Valta Domar says in the troll room, nothing ever happens on this show, and I'm not even enjoying making fun of season 2. It's just boring, and I think that hits it on the T. Like outside of the freaking the store Hobbit right there, you got us your.
Oh yeah. No, nobody. Literally, his name is Nobody.
I know. There's nothing as
Right now,
comical as like last year with. There's so many things that were comical from
they
last
took
year.
our jobs. Like that whole plot point.
The sea is always right.
The sea is always
what was
right.
The other one. Why does a ship sink and a turd float or something?
Yeah, a ship floats and a rock sinks. And it's like, oh, brilliant.
And the reason why is because the rock is looking at the bottom and the ship is looking at the start
forward or at
the
just like it's.
And then freaking Tarmuriel's brilliant plan
with
to fool everyone that that she's not blind is by doing a blindfold.
Even the pyroclastic like cloud stuff where like it goes through and like all of these normal people are still alive and like some of the buildings get damaged and then like a horse is kind of on fire. It's like I know there's some other stuff that we're definitely forgetting.
But like this year, it's just been kind of.
It's just like a big nothing. It's a big nothing burger, dude. Like they kept. Remember how? Like I guess what's gonna happen is that 7. You know how they were saying there's like a 2-part battle.
Yeah.
It's got to be 7 and 8.
Well,
right?
I think it's
or
supposed
is
to
it 6
span
and
over
7?
three episodes.
Oh, so the last 3 we were there,
right?
right?
Yeah, so 6, 7,
7 and 8. So we're there.
And maybe the first one is like everything riling up, and
there's gonna be some rioting or something in Numenor next episode, or like people, they're drawing lines in the sand. Some of it is like so stupid too. They're like Isildur's sister is just like, dude, the jump for her, like, okay. Character doesn't actually exist. We talked about that in season 1. You can find season 1 reviews on our YouTube channel if you're curious. It's like 15 hours, but it's all there. But she like kind of was getting seduced by it's like the Alfarazon's son, right?
Yes.
And so like there was sort of a quote unquote romantic relationship going on there. Again, we all have to do this under the notion that we're all on the same page, that when we talk about this stuff, it's not well developed.
Yes.
We do have to sort of read into we have to read into it a little bit to get to where they're at. They just skip an entire like plot point with her where she looks at an orb. Is that a Palantir?
Yeah.
Right.
Palantir.
It's actually a Palantir. So she looks at that, and then like
Get it right, nerd.
she gets like scared or whatever, and then we don't see her again really. She's got like a brief cameo in like episode 1 of this season, and then she shows back up and she's like evil. And you're like, what?
Which I get that was her arc but like this is the
they just
this
skipped
is the problem.
it. They just go no. We'll yeah, we don't need that.
I don't know if you remember you talking about skipping a lot of this episode. There's a lot of skipping. What I mean by that is I don't think it was the last episode because I don't think the drawers were in the last episode. I think it was the episode before last. So what was this? Was this episode 5?
This
right?
was 5.
So
if they're in 4, it's not much.
Episode
I just
3.
don't remember.
It was Anatar. They had just at literally the last bit of the episode was Doran brought them to Celebrimbor and they were pitching, the rings, but the drawers were not sure on it. They were like, what, and especially with all of what happened last season with. Okay, I don't know if you remember this, David, but I do have to say it. I don't want to beat a dead horse regarding the lore because we know they're not sticking to it.
Right.
In any type of sincere attempt, but Durin is not it's not sequential like that. Like it's not during the 5th and during the 4th based off of blood lineage. I digress to not get into a whole spill, but during the 5th or whatever he is in this show says to his son, which is during the 4th or whatever, last season, like we don't trust elves, they're bad and all that stuff. Which is hey, that's good. Okay, great.
Oh yeah, yeah, because there was that whole thing with
that's how it's supposed to be. That is sticking to the lore.
Yeah.
But
Elrond.
In episode 3 of this season, they're like not sure about the rings and everything. All of a sudden it cuts and they've accepted it. And we don't I would have imagined there would have been a bit of arguing back and forth between the king
a great point.
and Durin. And then maybe, even though this didn't happen, but if you wanted to make this change, I wouldn't necessarily be entirely opposed to it, which would be you could see maybe Sauron manipulates the king. Really what happened is there were a bunch of rings that were made, and then when all the 9 rings for men, 7 for dwarves were made, those weren't made to be given to dwarves and men. They were made specifically to be given to the elves. But then basically long and short of it, Sauron ends up giving them to the dwarves and the men because men are more easily corrupted and everything. And then the 3 elven rings were made in secret by Celebrimbor without Sauron's knowledge. But the only reason why Sauron was able to control them, they're pure. And the whole reason why he was able to control them is, including the elven rings, is because his one ring. The elven rings were made with the same techniques that he has shown Celebrimbor. So
yeah, dude, oh man, I mean, we can definitely get into it, but the rings are just.
So it's just like I'm sorry, I meant this. I said all that to say this episode just started with the dwarves accepting.
Oh yeah. Well, he has all the rings sitting there, like he's got in this shot, pretty much this opening shot. He picks it up and he puts it on. And
the rings don't do what the one ring do.
Yeah, it's so dumb, dude. Like, you see it all the time where it's like, oh,
let's just have some creativity.
Heavy. It's this. It's
raspberry lighted.
And it sucks, dude, because this season we talked about it at some point already. In the hands of a more skilled, like more just across the board, more skilled craftsman, you would have had a season that was very much about Anatar tricking everyone, being like, that's what he should be doing, and he's just like, he's clearly evil, and it's just like no one seems to notice.
No, and Celebrimbor is quite possibly the dumbest elf. That's one of the things my keeper said. She was like, the main thing that stood out for me is she's like, I know
he's so dumb.
that Sauron manipulates him, right?
Yeah.
But it's so dumb with how it's being displayed. You would have thought he would have caught on by now by like, hey, Galadriel says don't trust Halbrand. Halbrand shows up, and then he comes in the form of Anatar, and then he's like...
and he's just like, oh yeah, let's keep making rings. And he's like, oh, you're kind of doing it wrong. Let me help you again. And you're like, oh, dude. Yeah, and that's the thing is like, so the way that it would have... the way that I envisioned it in my mind, being done... I would say like like more correct or whatever, is something closer to some of the like throne room scenes that you have in Game of Thrones, where there's these conversations going back and forth about like the need for these things and why it's important, and like Anatar slowly overpowering everyone and manipulating them into being like, this really is the best. This is the best choice, and like, it's a mix. It is like ultimately about that power, right? Like I guess that's kind of the central theme of all of it. But it's like, yeah, like you do need this. Like here's why, and you could have made this interesting. You could easily could. You could have. It's. I mean, not that it would be that hard. I think anyone who got a hold of something like this and actually put the effort in and learned about these characters and why they fell and why that, as much as you can, right? And then your job is essentially to, as carefully as possible and as caringly as possible, craft something together that people are going to see and be like, yeah, I'm cool with
that
this.
we want to see. That's from Tolkien. Nobody if I was in charge of the show, if I was in charge of Star Wars, if I was in charge of Shogun, if I was in charge of Rings of Power, what have you, you name it. If I was in charge of Twilight, like making a series off of that or a movie off of that, I'm not going to come up with Joseph's version of Twilight or Joseph's version of Rings of Power or, the Second Age, so on and so forth. I'm going to try and stick to the authors, main themes, ideas, lore, and everything like that. Sure. And when and where, because you can't include every character. You can't include everything. You have to make some changes.
Yeah.
And when and where that makes sense, that's what I would do. But here's the best part about the Second Age for everything that Amazon had the rights to. They could have stuck to everything Tolkien said and not changed really a thing. And there would have been pieces for them to use their own creativity to fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
But instead they were like, I know that Jennifer Salk, after she took over, because she wasn't the one that got the rights to the Rings of Power, was the last dude that was in charge. And after Christopher Tolkien died, of course, they had to change and make this turd of a show. But Jennifer Salk, in all her infinite wisdom, thought that, hey, I should hire 2 inexperienced guys to run this show that don't have a writing credit. That's different from Peter Jackson leading Lord of the Rings, because he actually had credits to his name and stuff like that.
Sure, and it's not just that, but like, he just wasn't alone in that. You know what I mean? Like he obviously was
Philippa Boyens and Fran and everything else. But here's the thing: Jennifer Salk should absolutely be fired for the show. Why is that? This is the example. I'm going to use a foosball example for you, David. All right, so Georgia, right? And the University of Georgia has been pretty dominant in football under Kirby Smart. Now, if Kirby Smart, and he's way better of a head coach than Jennifer Salk is at leading Amazon, but let's just pretend that Jennifer Salk had been as successful as Kirby Smart up until Lord of the Rings, right?
Sure.
And let's say Kirby Smart this year had gone 0-12. Okay, maybe he comes back at the end of the year. Maybe.
Right.
And then next year he goes 0-12 again. That's what this show is for Amazon, because this isn't a show just to be #1 streaming on Amazon with how much money they've sunk into it, which is every low estimate I've seen has been at least $750 million, if not more.
That's more.
Right?
I mean, it's absolutely,
it's over $1 billion.
We know it's more.
Yep. And so I say that to say that's a colossal failure. Like this show had to be #1 globally. You can't have season 3s of shows on Netflix that no one's ever heard of, or The Reacher on your own platform beating this show.
Yeah.
This is a show I've watched.
It was like #2 stream.
Yes. And this is a show I've watched to where I looked at and said, I objectively know I can do a better job than them. When I've watched Shogun or House of the Dragon or Arcane, I've never come away thinking I can do a better job than that. But when I watch Rings of Power, when I watch Witcher, when I watch anything Star Wars or anything Disney, that's TV shows or even their movies lately, I'm like, oh, I could easily do a better job than this. This is easy because that's not a brag on me. I think you could. I think people in our troll room probably could.
It's not that hard. Like, if you want to make, you do your best to learn from what people have done before. Don't make an exact copy of it. And obviously there are things that get in the way with these big. This is one of the problems we have with where Gary talks about this a lot, where fandom is now. It's all been corporatized.
Yep.
So there was a time, I guess, to a
And you
degree.
can't corporatize art.
Well, it's not that. It's that there was a time where, like, regardless of what you think of the prequels, like, George Lucas owned Star Wars. Like, that was his baby, right? And then Disney bought it, and this corporate behemoth all of a sudden owns this incredibly popular thing and then just runs it into the ground for one reason or another. Completely splits the fan base. They're constantly at battle with like old school fans, calling them all sorts of names. You've seen the same thing happen with Ghostbusters. You've seen the same thing happen with Ninja Turtles. The same thing has happened with Indiana Jones. It's happened with Star Trek. Pick your Doctor Who. Pick your property at this point. These fandoms and these corporations have turned all of this stuff into just corporate slop. That's all that it is at this point. And so, I started, for whatever reason, I was thinking about Rebel Moon, and I was like, that's not really corporate slop. That's just
flop.
Yeah, it's just Zack Snyder being terrible. But you see a lot of this stuff happening now. And then what I would say is somewhat, and because I don't mean like a corporation is putting out something, or like an entity is putting out like a product. It's these like behemoth companies that are creating content, quote unquote, right? Like, it's not, they don't care how good it is one way or another. They just have to continue to churn this stuff out, and they want the name recognition. And for a while, being able to churn out content worked for like Netflix, Amazon, and occasionally they would have good stuff. There was a time where like I would have probably argued, like maybe a little bit earlier on in Amazon's run before this came out in particular, that they were putting out some pretty high quality stuff. It was like them and HBO. I mean, HBO has always been pretty dominant in that with Game of Thrones.
That's because the old guy that was in charge.
Yeah.
He got the right to the Conan stuff when Jennifer Salt gets in there.
Right. And
she scraps that, like.
Yeah, so it's all of that, right? And then you have something like Arcane that is being created by the people who made League of Legends. Like, it's their baby. They are making the decisions. As far as I'm aware, like they're the ones making the decisions on how the story is being played out. They're right. Literally, Arcane, I think, is going to keep going, but like this, they're going to end storylines for certain characters this season. And it doesn't mean that they won't show up again or whatever the case may be, but like that arc is going to be done after this season, which is not something you get from things like this. It's why no one like Marvel, right? That whole thing. No one ever really dies in Marvel anymore, or like there's always rumors that characters are just going to keep coming back, especially now with all of what they're doing, because there's always the chance for that product to come back up because people like it and they can use it for this, that, or the other. I mean, that's, again, it's
right.
Regardless, like that's kind of what happened with Wolverine. It's like that was done. And then the corporate slop comes along and they go, no, it's not done. And like they make a joke about it in Deadpool where they're like, you're basically going to be making Wolverine movies until you're like in your 90s or whatever. And it's like, haha, yeah, it's kind of funny, but it's like, it's kind of true. Like if it keeps, it's like, it's kind of
funny enough.
True.
They've already greenlit Deadpool 4 and Hugh Jackman's returning.
Yeah, well, it's not surprising. I mean, like
the
two of them together have great chemistry. Now they just need to get someone who can write a story.
Yes.
Like
Taki Wakiti.
Yeah, well, you just need some people who can actually like put a coherent story together, and bring back the cast from the first two movies as well. And like no more, oh god, I need whatever. Deadpool makes a lot of money. I get why they want to keep making them, but like, yeah. But yeah, man, that's why a lot of this is going on. Is just it's such slop, and like you don't like Shogun, right? Like they have more control over what they're doing with that. They don't have people. This is why there were a lot of directors, even early on in Marvel's run when they were still really popular. that they had a lot of directors that were quitting because Disney had this like iron fist approach to the way they did things. And so like your creativity gets hampered when someone's constantly over you like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't make that joke. It's why the Solo movie ended up costing them, I think, $500 million or so. Like it was a really expensive movie because they shot a lot of stuff. Then they fired the 2 directors and then basically had to redo the entire movie. And you know, that was probably the canary in the coal mine to some degree. I mean, it was The Last Jedi, but that was a big one of like, man, they are just wasting money. Like they are willing to just absolutely, like at the time especially, they just did not care because they thought they had a cash cow. Turns out,
and I think that's what Amazon thought with Rings of Power too, when it just isn't the case, because as you know, a lesson they refuse to learn is that you actually have to care for the source material, or at least feign that you do, and at least be competent in what you're doing as well. It's always going to work better for you when you actually do like the source material and you're not openly mocking it and degrading it, which is just weird. If you feel so strongly, why even take it on? I mean, outside the fact that I know it's because you can't come up with anything on your, or these people can't create anything of their own. They have to take a known IP that has a built-in fan base and destroy it because, you know, again, they really don't know how to create characters in a universe and a world and stuff of their own fantasy wise.
Volta Dumar said, it's a miracle that Disney let Tony Gilroy make Andor. Yeah, that, I mean,
and it really is just a, I was going to say, just this felling upwards in Hollywood. Christopher Lee actually mentioned that in an interview I heard from him as well. There's this perpetual felling upwards in Hollywood. Case in point, one of the writers for Rings of Power. I mean, it makes sense because the showrunners are from Bad Reboot, and the executive producer Lindsay Weber's from Bad Reboot. But one of the writers for this season, I think they had a new writer for each episode, and one of the writers, I think either for episode 4 or episode 3, was from Star Trek Discovery. Yeah. I've never watched Star Trek Discovery, but I've heard enough people.
I don't have any interest. I just don't have any interest in it. All right. Well, yeah.
So let's get back into this.
Yeah. Now that we've literally haven't even moved like that many frames into it. So we know that the dwarves are digging because the mines collapsed and they lost light, and so they've been trying to open up the shafts in order to get light back into the mines. Now, as far as I'm aware, we never had a discussion of why they couldn't just reopen the passages that they originally used.
Well, it's not just that, David. It's clearly what they're going to show is that the ring lets Durin know where to dig for light, but they have these expert dwarven engineers, right? And they apparently, you know, these expert dwarven engineers don't know the curvature of the old mountain they've been living out for a millennia.
Yeah, they don't exactly. Yeah, they don't. I was thinking the same thing because there's a shot where like I think it's after Durin finds the correct spot with the ring, but they show this like outside view of a cliffside or whatever, and it's like, well, duh, you know, like that. Yeah, you know, I'm like almost taking my fingers and I'm like, if I'm here and then I go outside, like this would be the direction that I need to be at for the light. I also thought it was really funny because there's a line after they discover that and everyone's like, oh my gosh, he knows what he's doing. We need to listen to him. And he goes like, the light we're not like slaves to the light or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you are.
Yes, dude. I was about to say, that's why I was laughing.
What are you?
Was because he's like, we're not a slave to the light like the other races are. And then it's like, but we need to dig and
Yeah, Kaza Doom, we are free of its tyranny. Let's see if there's a. Hang on, we can get the exact phrasing of it.
That's too funny.
Well,
there's some people that I respect and like that have. One of them gave it a 9 out of 10. Another person only gave it like a 5.
This episode
6, yeah. But I'm not gonna mention them because I really like their channel and they're really great. They've been honestly reviewing this. They're a lore channel of mine that I like.
Oh, I was gonna say, do we know them? You don't have to mention them, but like, bro, a 9.
I'm like, this is why they're a
A
lore
9
channel
is
and they're
near.
not a review channel. Because there's no way, objectively speaking,
I
this
I
episode is
need
a 9.
I need people to understand something. Like just because we, gosh, I don't want to get on too much of a tangent with this because we do talk about this a lot. A 9 is like Terminator 2. A 9 is probably some of the episodes in Shogun. Yeah, like I wouldn't. I don't know if Shogun as a whole would necessarily hit like a 9 for me. It's pretty dang close. Like it's the closest thing we've seen in a while. Like there are things that are just so solid, and then they go above and beyond to craft their story and their characters and the things that they're doing. Like you get to a 9 because you are a masterclass at what you're doing. Like there are episodes of South Park that I would give 9s to because they understand what they're doing. They know how to hit the beats. They understand their characters. Like there's all of that kind of stuff going on. And so it boggles my mind when someone looks at anything from Rings of Power and goes, yeah, 9, 8, 7.
Yeah.
It's like, have we been watching? Like, dude, I wish I could get into the brain of someone, because it's like if you're just basing it all on like lore and you're just like, oh, they mentioned these things. Oh, they showed the door. You know, we haven't even gotten there, but like, oh, the door. Remember
Sauron manipulated
yeah.
Celebrimbor.
Remember
It's
the
like,
door.
I get that. I get they manipulated that Sauron Anatar manipulated Celebrimbor, but not like shown in a stupid way like this, to where it's so painfully obvious he's being manipulated.
You need to go back to that lore channel and be like, please stop falling for key jangling. Please stop falling for it.
Yeah.
It's like if and we said this before, like if you only care about the lore for Lord of the Rings, you have that already. Like I don't understand how this meaning, other than you visually getting to see some of this, which I've seen pictures drawn by people that give you a better visual of the stuff that happens in Tolkien's lore than you do from this show. I saw a picture of it was Celebrimbor and Anatar that someone had drawn, and I was like, it looks great. It was like Anatar actually looks like someone that could fool you because of how like beautiful he is. And then you look at this and you're like, dude, how this guy clearly is evil.
Like, Halbrand puts on a wig.
Dude, it is that much
My
of a
master disguise has paid off.
Yeah, it is that much of a meme. He goes, long wig, pointy ears. I am Anatar. He like comes out, dude. He comes out of the furnace. We just need
Gil-galad to show up with a freaking a mustache on and just be like, I'm not Gil-galad.
I hate that. This is total slightly off. I've been watching a lot of South Park recently. That's why it's coming to mind. Because I was, after listening to them talk about their writing, like how they kind of handled their writing process, right. I was like, man, I want to go back. Like, I want to really like analyze a lot of what they do, and especially once you get into about like season 5 or 6, you really start to see that shine with them. And it's like, dude, that show is in. It is. I think that show is, what's the word? Like, not insulting. What's the word I'm looking for, Joseph? It's slipping my mind. Sorry, it's been a long day. Like, that show is more offensive now than I think it was when those episodes aired.
Oh yeah,
and there's stuff that they don't quite land. They're a little too soft on like John McCain.
Oh yeah.
But there's stuff that like they just nail absolutely. And dude, but they just like they understand what they're doing, right? And it's insane to me that a show about a bunch of like fourth graders getting into these insane like scenarios that's just like a straight up like comedy and most people would dismiss as being like stupid is better written than
Tolkien's
a ton,
second age show.
Dude, a ton of stuff that we've been getting recently. And it's funny because like I wish that they were what I was getting to is that I wish they were a little more. This is a sort of criticism I have of them at this point. I mean, they're gazillionaires and they don't really need to like they once did. But I wish there's nothing that kind of has its pulse, like a South Park type thing that has its pulse on current like entertainment like South Park did in its heyday.
Yeah.
They still do, and they still do funny
Well, I think
stuff.
that then it was more accepted to make fun of the people that they made fun of that were not were in the mainstream, right? Controlling kind of mainstream, and now the people that have been more generally on their side are in the mainstream, and so now it's hard. They do hit that way, but it's harder to have the pulse when it's your own.
Yeah, and it's different from like talking heads on YouTube. Nothing wrong with that. But they were so creative in the way that they did things, and it's kind of the reason I really thought of that is because you were talking about how like Halvaran just puts a wig on and everyone's like, oh, you're not that guy anymore. Like I clearly can trust this person who came out of the fire. It seems to it
Look
like
exactly like all.
yeah, and then like doesn't seem to have the best intentions. Like there's a way that you seduce and that you and I mean again this just goes back to like the people creating the show just don't understand these concepts very well. There's like a controversy going on right now with Silent Hill 2 that the people who like remade the game don't understand the like adult themes that the game is trying to get across. And so they've toned a lot of it down, which completely undermines why those things were there in the first place. And it's a problem now, man. It's a weird how, and we've talked about this before too. That a lot of minus maybe like The Boys, which I stopped watching seasons ago. But most stuff seems to have become, and I don't mean this in the traditional sense, but it's like it's almost like a Hollywood version of like puritanical.
Yeah.
Where it's like and they're so confused by it, right? Like but they don't know how to like delve into, and I don't mean this as like in an X-rated sense, just like but adult topics, like topics that are more mature. They don't know what to do with them because everything is about like making sure that certain things aren't offensive or making sure that like you're not sexualizing something, but like that's not always used in a way. In like a traditional way. Sometimes it's used, like horror uses that a lot in a horrific way to talk about like horrific things that have happened. And like you can't do that stuff anymore. It's like like female characters in movies and television are like very protected now. And like it's a lot of the time, and it's why it's always crazy to me. Like I can't remember. I think I told you about this a while ago. There's a movie I watched where like this lady gets like murdered in it, like one of the main characters, and like it's pretty brutal. And I was just like shocked by it because I was like, you just don't see that stuff anymore. Because they were like, no, you can't do that. Like they're over in this little box, they're safe here, and the story can still exist around them while they just kind of. But it makes them boring, right? It's why Vi and Jinx are so interesting in Arcane because they're not that. They don't sit in little boxes and they're never hurt by anything. Like they're incredibly damaged people, and that's what makes them so interesting. But that's kind of all of that kind of comes together. It's just like it's impossible now with the quality of like content that we're getting. I say that, but I mean like it just as a general term, not just shoveling content into our mouths, but like people don't know how to kind of make those mature stories or treat things as an adult and to come at them from a way that when you're watching even something like this where you can have those kind of themes in there, you can have that stuff going on, even something like war, right? Like that is a topic that needs a certain level of maturity behind it, like All Quiet on the Western Front. But we don't get that anymore with sort of like what I would say is like sort of your mainstream stuff, like the continuing churning out of like content that we get. It's always kind of treated with like baby gloves or just like in an immature way. Anyway, Sorry, we're going on some rants tonight, folks.
But yeah, the ingenious plan with the ring is to show that it leads the dwarves to light.
Yeah, that they claim is that doesn't hold them.
They're not
Pity. Yeah,
subjected to.
he says, "I pity those who dwell above, slaves to the sun, chained to its ceaseless rhythm of waking and sleep." And the light comes out. I know he says some more. In Khazad-dûm, we are free of its tyranny. Here we bring the sun to us, but it's like the sun still rises and sets. You are still chained to the sun.
Yep.
It's gonna go down, and then you don't have sun. And this guy's supposed to be their it's the stupid, bro. This might be dumber than the rock sinking and the boat floating.
Yes.
Because at least a rock sinks and a boat floats. This guy is saying, like, we control the sun, and it's like, no, you don't.
And I think there are interesting plot lines in for the dwarves in this episode that with better writers could be fleshed out in a much more interesting way.
If this was about how I don't know, like the dwarves carve their own paths, and you make it about like Khazad-dûm being this incredible thing, and like, the pride of the dwarves has got to be in there a little bit, and maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe their intention is for us to be like, hey, dummy, that's not the case, but it's just weird. Because you don't want, in the same way, like, we're not supposed to think Galadriel is a massive idiot and that all the dwarves or all the elves are stupid. Because of like they don't seem to know anything. It's the same way with the dwarves. We're not supposed to think that they're idiots. We're supposed to be like, ooh, that seems like a bad decision that you're making there.
Yes.
Like your pride is now getting in the way of the things that you're
like we
doing.
get to see in Shogun when we watched it.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, like, yeah, we can just keep pointing. It's supposed to be about flaws in the character, not just like the character being completely flawed and like
not because the character is necessarily just an idiot in every single way.
Dude, I love the way they're doing like a cheerleader chant where they're like Khazad-dûm.
Dude, I love later on the 7 dwarf lords. At this point, I just don't even care. They just look comically bad around the table.
Do you even really get to see? Because I was scanning through it again. You don't even really get to see them, right?
Just
a couple
a
of
them.
There's some of them are sitting, and the shots are all the backs of their heads.
Yeah, for the most part.
I guess
you get to see the front of some of them, but it's not like you got to be paying attention.
Yeah. What do we need to talk about with like Anatar in this? Oh, here's the door. Joseph, remember the door?
Remember? The doors are doing.
Yeah. And dude, it's just friends, like they can't. Yeah.
I love how it was made off screen too, and they didn't even devote an episode to Narvi and Caleb. By the way, Narvi, I know you wouldn't know watching the show.
No, it sounds like
but Narvi and Celebrimbor are supposed to be like best friends, and that's the whole reason. The point to the doors. With it being
you're right.
Save friend and enter. That's the whole point. Is because Celebrimbor and Narvi were best friends, and that's unusual for the two different races of dwarves and elves. The elves of Eregion and the dwarves of Khazad-dûm had a special relationship. But yeah, that's not important. So
yeah, well, it's funny. Narvi just reminds me of the annoying fairy that helps you in Ocarina of Time, Navi. It's very similar. But yeah, man, I mean, it's all it is. They don't care. That's why this is here. It's member door. Do you remember door enough? Do we need to remind you about the passcode being friend?
Yeah.
It's just like, this is so like, oh, it's so cringe, bro. And then we move on.
Sauron manipulating later on the episode that female elf.
Yeah,
that's Celebrimbor's assistant is taken from Lord of the Rings Online.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, well, that whole plot side plot of him manipulating her.
Uh-huh.
That's literally what Sauron does or Anatar does in Lord of the Rings online
Oh, that's funny.
video game. So, and here's what
They should
speaking
have put some
of
lifts. They should have put some lifts on her and let her be Galadriel.
yeah, right. Speaking of you're talking about copy and things like. There's nothing wrong with it, and we're bringing up the Doors of Doran. There's nothing wrong with the homage and stuff to Peter Jackson because
No, not
they've
at all.
copied him a lot,
If you were to
and they'd
do
even
that
copied
plot,
Tolkien.
if you were to do that plot about the door, and it was how you build up Celebrimbor and Narvi and have this whole like thing, and it's what we complain about with the show is one of the things. I mean, it's way down the list at this point, but the show moves at lightning speed through these things.
Yes.
When
these things were taken, spanning across hundreds and hundreds
yeah,
and
and
hundreds of years.
It's honestly, it's a problem that I kind of had with House of the Dragon that at times it moves too quickly. But I like that show. You know what I mean? Like, it's still a criticism, but I like that show. So that's probably going to be a little higher on the list on House of the Dragon. But for this, it's really low because like the show just doesn't work on normal merits.
Yeah.
Of course, the pacing's off, right? Like that just added to the list. Like that's not.
And all this is Celebrimbor and Anatar having a discussion of like, oh, you need to make the rings for men, and Celebrimbor's like, no, they're too easily corrupted, and Anatar's like, no, please, and then Celebrimbor's like, no, Sauron,
Yeah,
no, Anatar.
Yeah, he says no, and then like a thing happens, and he goes, well, I guess I'm back on board.
Later on, he does.
Yeah, it's so
Not
stupid. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna. Oh yeah, and then because later on too, like you were saying, like Anatar's talking to his assistant. He's basically like, "You're just as pretty as Galadriel." It's like, oh brother. Yeah, and then I believe
this episode's a lot of spinning wheels.
Oh, dude, it's so much.
There's really not a ton to talk about as far as. Interesting things.
I could have summed up the whole episode in under 10 minutes, I think.
Oh, gosh,
if I was just giving you like plot beats or whatever.
Yeah.
Eagle.
I'm glad that they finally, start incorporating the Numenorians, Ar-Pharazôn wanting to ban, the ban of men, and that they can't go to Oman, and like. The elves get longer lifespans and stuff. At this point, who cares? At this point, it's like, even if this episode stuck to the lore perfectly and was woven in a good way, at this point, it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Not that it does that. I mean, maybe.
And it's actually.
It would matter more than I'm saying. Maybe I'm just, bringing all the baggage from everything beforehand. But it's just like you said, with this, it's just. All of a sudden, he's king just because a dude shouted at a rally, Pharazôn, and then Eagle landed.
And Eagle landed, and so everyone goes, yeah, you now.
Yeah.
Not blind lady. You. It's just like, it's not interesting. It's moving too quickly. There's no one's given time to be like, okay, is like, how, at least there should be some like conflict in the viewer about these characters involved in this political thing. Like the problem is that they have him out just to be like the bad guy, right? Like it's so obvious everything that he's doing. Like there needs to be a little bit of what he's doing at least where you go, but he might be kind of right here,
Yep.
Like, oh, I can at least see, even if I disagree, I see where he's coming from with this. Like you need to be able to connect to him a little bit on some of the things that he's saying. But then ultimately being like, no, he's probably wrong, and then you slowly reveal like just the sort of like evil behind it, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, it's a build up over time, and then he does things that are pretty unforgivable, so that when his downfall eventually comes, you're like, yeah, that was deserved. But then like you might like him as a character at the same time, like that's why when you write them in a complex way. You're gonna get better performances for one, but your characters are just gonna be more interesting when they're layered, and it's not like, Tamriel's blinded, and then they have this meeting, and then they argue in this meeting about who should be in control, and then a guy shouts about it, and then an eagle lands, and then Alfarazon is now king, right? So we skip all of the drama, and we're just hitting plot points. Like, that's what's so crazy about this episode too, is that like you don't need it's too long in the sense that like you could have probably handled most of the, like, you could have made this half an hour and gotten every single one of your beats accomplished with half the time of what they did.
Right.
Because there's nothing in the extra stuff that's in here that makes a difference. He could have had like a quick conversation here, and then they could have gone down to the temple when all of that stuff happens, and that could have been that for that episode, right? It's like the same thing with the stuff going on with Anatar and Celebrimbor. It's pretty much the same stuff going on with the dwarves, right? Like, maybe they're the main kind of focus of the episode or whatever, and everything else is like little 10-minute spiels, and you're out in like 30 minutes, maybe 40.
Yep.
Yeah, they could have cut a lot. And these episodes are pretty much at an hour long each. Not to mention the first one, which was even longer.
This episode is better because it doesn't have the Harfoots in it.
I
Just
guess.
On that alone. But
yeah, fair enough. And Galadriel's only in it for like 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's clear they listened to the criticisms of
Yeah.
season 1. I mean, it definitely is, but man, I mean, it's just I wish there was something better on that we could just stop reviewing this. And
don't worry, it's only 3 more episodes. We're almost there.
Almost there.
This whole thing too with them hating the elves and the Age of Men and the whole deal, like, it's just not convincing because there hasn't been enough time and development between the men and the elves as well.
The Age of Men.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you didn't take that from Lord of the Rings when they say the age of the orc has come.
Yeah.
From Peter Jackson's.
And then he basically tells him, do this task for me, and we'll, and then the two of them are talking because there's still some people that are loyal. At some point in here, then he loses his rank, and this is when his daughter becomes...
Yeah, this is when everybody does the
Yeah, she does her
Captain.
Yeah, so stupid. I can't believe they didn't do the "C is always right" again. I'm shocked. But yeah, they have like a falling out. She has this random, just out of nowhere heel turn. Like, they barely developed that, and now she basically is against him. Sucks, bro.
Yeah.
And everyone stands around. It's just it's so boring too, dude. The way that they like handle this situation, because they're trying to build the tension for what happens at the end of the episode.
And it's not built at all. Because again, we don't get to spend enough time with these characters, and again, it's not necessarily with old Valenteri or whatever his name, Valandir, Victor, whatever, that we have to spend all this time with him and everything, but at least a bit more time than what we got,
for sure.
And development and care, and being able to see Elendil really lead a fleet and see how much his men respect him and so on and so forth.
Celebrimbor writes a letter. We should have that would have been a good title for this too. Celebrimbor writes a letter. And we get this literal like 3-second scene of Elrond running through a forest.
Oh yeah.
And it ends. It is what an odd placed little thing to put in here.
Running from Aragon all the way to Linden. Yeah, that's...
We can skip the rest of the door stuff. The only thing of note here is actually that I think Disa hears the Balrog.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was dumb how for some reason they're in the little market and...
Yeah, she conveniently drops the crystal or whatever.
The crystal ball. And it happens to go down this shaft that's like right there that she's never been down before.
Yeah.
And then presumably it's the Balrog. I mean, I did think maybe it's the creature in the water, but nah, I'm like, that's the Balrog from what they showed last season.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what they've been building up to. I don't even know if anybody watching this remembers that they showed the Balrog last season. That's like a plot point. I wonder if we'll see him before, like, or if they'll tease him again.
Yeah,
Because we're
I
what
hope they
five?
tease
We're
him
5
again.
episodes into this, and that just hasn't come up again. Like they haven't even had someone like down mining somewhere or whatever, and then like the Balrog like eats him or whatever. Like
Yeah.
anything, you know what I mean, to like help keep that going, other than
Well, they
some
missed the
spooky
marketing
noises.
with this show because we could have had a baby Balrog,
Oh,
you know,
baby Balrog, that would have
or baby
been.
Sauron. Imagine if Sauron, when he got killed by Adar, um, when he became the spaghetti monster, he came back as baby Sauron.
Yeah. Here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Our 7 dwarf kings. Is that right?
Yes,
It's
the
pretty much.
seven, and one of them looks like a
Oh
female.
yeah, this one's got a.
Two,
I think
two of
this
them,
might be.
three of them,
Yeah, and that looks
four of
like
them.
they're gonna. They won't ever do it for Disa, but if this one right here is actually a woman, that's a pretty big beard. So, congratulations on at least like.
I
They're just
did
like.
notice that with Disa, her beard was a bit more pronounced this season than
Yeah,
last.
yeah, she got a little more going on there for sure. They're never gonna do it. They're never gonna go full out for that.
It's the
But
dwarven
actually, no,
postpartum
that might be a guy. That's
beard growth.
right. Cause
I know, I just thought they looked freaking ridiculous.
They talk about the ring. It's heavy on his hand. Blah blah blah. It's not interesting.
And Narvi's like, it's right, because he's like, "Where's my ring? Where's my ring?" And
Oh
Narvi's
yeah,
like,
doing
"It's
that.
right there,
Yeah,
sire."
yeah. Oh, my precious dude! I can't believe he didn't say that. Like at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season we get a call back to that. We get another ring that they're creating that makes this lady invisible. She like drops an anvil or something. I don't know what was going on here. Like it. So I was just confused. It's like, oh, she disappeared. She had a ring on, and then she starts like causing problems. I guess she was scared, was what they were going for, because she saw like
Yeah,
some creepy stuff. I actually didn't. If I'm trying to be generous to the show, the part where Anatar's talking to her about sort of like the other world and like this kind of spiritual realm, there, just as like a moment of the two of them talking to each other, it's probably the closest thing I've seen of him seeming like a character who's able to manipulate other characters.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Like, oh, it was a moment of that was something,
Yeah, we're getting some kind of writing in the show. I do think probably, I mean, maybe we're splitting hairs here
Yeah.
and saying like this is probably the best written episode of the series so far. But that's
Oh,
not
man,
like
I don't
that's
know.
like saying instead of it typically being a 1, this is a 3. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm the only reason I would be looking forward to the action episodes is they're kind of fun to break down for how stupid they are, and then it's just less people
It's
talking.
like last season.
Yeah, like anytime there was like action going on, it's fun to talk about how dumb it is, but it also means we don't have to talk about the awful.
We don't have to listen to boring dialogue.
writing. Yeah. But I did kind of think that was really interesting. It's like I said, it's the one time when they tell you like, okay, Sauron, he's disguising himself as Anatar. He's supposed to be able to manipulate these people. He's beautiful. Like there's all of these things that I've been told, and like watching this, I go, I don't see it at all. And that was like a brief moment where I was like, oh, someone almost had some clarity there. Like they remembered what they were doing, and that he is trying to manipulate them, and him comforting her, and like he is manipulating her into like not looking at him as the potential, but it could be someone else. It's like, oh, okay, like you did something there.
Yeah. There was an attempt.
There was an attempt, yes. At minimum, that was the case. I think during, I'm trying to remember this part.
Oh yeah, he comes and says to Celebrimbor, "Hey, bro, I think, my father's been acting weird ever since he got your ring.
Right, that's right.
I've been trying to put 2 and 2 together. You think it could be the ring?"
You think Sauron's manipulating this somehow? Yeah,
You
there's
think
like
Anatar, maybe did something, or maybe tweaked your back mid swing on the technique? Because yeah, my father's been acting straight goof.
dude, and this look on
And that's the thing with the ring affecting the drawer so fast. That doesn't happen in the lore,
yeah.
and so it really presents everybody being freaking stupid. Because in
Yeah.
the lore, it's they don't take effect immediately as the show uh, makes you believe. It's spanning a lot of time before you really start seeing
I,
the greed come out of the drawers. And I
yeah.
say greed because you by nature, um, they are diggers, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And hoarders, right? Like they
yes,
yeah.
and so the ring increased that, but well, the same sense, it's almost like you kind of can't blame them because that's how they were made to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not happening this fast to where it's like,
I,
light, it shows me where to dig and
I missed this comment in the troll room.
makes me moody.
Volta Damar says going to tease the Balrog at the end of every season, and then he attacks off screen.
Yeah,
They pull an acolyte.
yeah.
Um,
Somehow the Balrog returned.
yeah. Bro, what was it the other day? What was I watching?
Is my squeaky desk coming through on the mic?
Barely. Like there's like
Okay.
a little bit of like noise, but I don't really hear it.
Hey, maybe my squeaky
That
desk can become like what the squeaky floor is for Ob and Breach.
So yeah, some of the Numenorians are in this temple. I know you know the name of it. To be honest, at this point, I could care less. They're basically told to get out. What's the reasoning for this? Is there like a lore thing for this? Like
Yeah,
why
showing
Alfarazon?
them as the faithful men, and so Numenor split because the King's men, who end up becoming the Black Numenorians, rejected God and ended up hating the elves as well, whereas the faithful stayed true and worshipped Eru Iluvatar, who's the god of Arda, Middle Earth, and then also stayed in friendship with the elves and stuff and
Yeah.
and everything.
Okay.
Ar-Pharazôn's son's a made-up character,
Of course.
and this whole scene is just
Bro, they made up a fake son for him and a fake daughter.
and a fake friend.
Yeah. And they didn't even go anywhere with the fake relationship.
Yeah,
Of the two, like
right.
they made these two characters up, and they're like they
No,
didn't.
he's mad because Ar-Pharazôn's fake son is mad at Isildur's fake friend because Isildur's fake sister showed kindness to Isildur's fake friend.
Yeah. Who is clearly a better fighter, like the whole deal, and then just gets stabbed in the back, dude. It's so lame.
Yeah, I did not see that coming. That was a total surprise.
We should have just finished him.
If only there was a way that both of them could have died in that scene.
I know
just so.
but to be honest, it would have been slightly more shocking. I don't know, or like interesting to me that it's like, oh, dude, Alfarazon's son just got like murked. Because he mentions that thing, and you go, oh man, something will happen to him eventually. But for it to happen to him like really fast, where it's like, oh, wow, it's a little unexpected. Like the show just doesn't keep you on your toes. It's so boring and predictable. You know what I mean? Like the minute that he like spared his life, I was like, well, he's dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here comes the sword.
So lame,
But-
dude. And this is the thing too, dude. Is like we haven't had, because we haven't had a lot of like action, and it's just these little dumb things happening, these little like moments of drama like this. There's nothing to like break down like there was. Remember when Galadriel was training the Numenorians in season 1, and we spent like a good chunk of time talking about how the way that she was dueling them, she just would have lost easily, and they were trying to use edits to make her look like she was better than she was. And like people
Yes.
were kind of like teleporting. I mean, they're still teleporting as far as like getting to places really quickly and then being back, and especially the dwarves and the elves, they seem to just fly all over the map. At least so far, the Numenorians have pretty much just been sitting in one place.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I forgot this is the episode Galadriel gets, where they show her being held captive by Hadar, and then it's
coming. Yeah, we can go ahead and get there. I mean,
he says, "Wait, you and I have a common identity or a common enemy." Excuse me. I'm like, oh gosh,
yeah,
dude, I can't believe they have Lady Galadriel getting captured by freaking orcs in this season. They really just do not understand this, do they?
It's hilarious.
It'd only be better if one of the orcs was secretly Celebrimbor. I mean, Celeborn, excuse me.
Celeborn. I mean, yeah. I'm still kind of hoping that that's what we're just gonna find out. That's who Adar is, even if it makes like zero sense. Because at this point, like nothing really makes sense. So for that to be the case, it'd just be so funny. But it's like, but how? It's like, shut up. That's how we wrote it.
Yeah, so dumb.
Because I saw something on Twitter about it, where like the way he's looking at her.
Oh yeah.
There's just like something about that that's like, huh.
We'll see. I don't think it is. I think Celeborn.
You're probably right. I mean, it's probably not going to happen this season, right? I mean, we're almost at the end. Like, maybe it's a tease for season 3. Or it'll just happen off screen like a lot of stuff does.
Oh, yeah.
But that's pretty much the episode. And Adar says we have a common enemy, and then they show Sauron / Anatar. It's like, yeah.
Yep. What else is new? The good news is
that's the episode.
We're on episode 5.
We're
on episode 6
more.
now. Excuse me.
Yeah.
The bad news is we're only on episode 6.
3 more.
Yes.
3 more. It's moving faster than last season did.
Yep.
I mean, and they know. I mean, that's
not fast enough.
Not fast enough for sure. But I mean, it's moving because they're just trying to get this thing out, and I think they're doing some. Part of me thinks that they're doing it this way as like damage control, because the less this show is in like the public eye, the better.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like it just kind of came to my mind recently. It's like, I wonder if that's what they're doing.
Dude, nobody's gonna be talking about this show.
They already aren't. I mean, like, I know I've heard a couple people be like, "Oh, there's some like stands on Twitter or whatever," and I'm like, I don't know. It's like it hasn't. It probably will come across
it's
now.
Like
but
a bunch of nobody.
Yeah, it's like bot accounts, right? Like just
pretty
dummies.
much. I mean, there are some people, but it's very minuscule.
I meant to look to see what.
Which is fine if you like the show. Again, as we've said before, that's fine. You can like it.
Like what you like,
but let's just be honest.
It don't make it good.
Yeah, exactly.
New, better, do. I meant to look this. I meant to look this
All right,
up
good friend of the
recently.
show.
Is he still on here? He doesn't come up.
No.
He's not coming up.
Do better. Isn't that it?
I thought it was new, better, do better.
I thought it was no better, do better. Maybe it is new, better, do better.
Oh, dude, our live stream came up under that search quicker. Maybe he's not on here.
Yeah, he is.
Oh,
he's on Twitter.
Oh,
he's on Twitter.
I was looking on
Sauron
YouTube.
Is the GOAT in Rings of Power Season 2. Truly deceiver. Told ya.
Bro, he is not still doing that.
We eating good for Rings of Power Season 2 for what we've seen is shaping up to be amazing. So all you haters are going to miss out, and it's a dang shame. Let's go, Sauron. Funny. Hey, you know what? That's fine.
Yeah, do you, bro?
Oh, man. That's okay. It's okay to like stuff that's bad.
I guess so,
A
man.
lot of people like McDonald's, and it's bad. So there's
Yeah.
things I like that's bad.
All right, everyone.
Well, we better close this out before it gets too off the rails.
I know, right? They're always kind of like that. I feel
Yeah.
it's always some form of that. Thank you guys again for listening to episode 185 of The Underground. This was our review of episode 5 of The Rings of Power, and our breakdown. And yeah, hope you all are all doing well. I imagine most of you are staying far away from this show. There clearly are about 3 of us watching it that we know of, probably about a dozen total. Dude, I wonder if, like, it probably wouldn't be the same, but I would be so curious if anyone would put one of those change.org petitions or whatever together for Rings of Power if it got canceled, like they did for the Acolyte, or if it would have that kind of like fanfare around it.
Honestly, if it did great numbers for us, and it got canceled, I'd probably do it.
Yeah, just because, yeah,
just so we get the
yeah,
the
yeah,
numbers.
of course, yeah. Every 2 years or whatever, we're talking about this, and it just gets duller and duller. I mean, like, on the trajectory it's at, dude, it just means that they're gonna have like less to do every season, and it's like I feel like we would, if this show just keeps going, by the time we're in like season 4 or 5, everyone's just gonna be like standing around.
Yeah.
And then like occasionally something happens. That's already kind of what it feels like, is they're all kind of standing around. I mean, they're having conversations, but there's not really any like drama to the actual conversations, and then somebody does something, and then other people do things, and that's just kind of where the show goes until we get to the last episode.
Yeah, it's people standing around talking uninterestingly.
Pretty much. All right. Well, thank you all. And until next time, y'all take it easy.
Shogun rules, Rings of Power drools.
Yeah.